Hey everybody, my name is Rydo, and today we are looking at Wolfenstein 3D. So, after the id Software's first series of Commander Keen, they definitely decided to go darker. And so instead they went to Castle Wolfenstein in Wolfenstein 3D, which is an odd series, Wolfenstein, considering how it's the original Wolfenstein 2 games weren't made by id Software, and frankly, except for the DLC of Spear of Destiny that was made for id Software, they never went back to Wolfenstein either. They gave over the rights to Bethesda Softworks, which is owned now by their same parent company that owns id Software, ZeniMax, and instead they eventually moved to making Doom, so killing Nazis was still not quite good enough for them. Instead they felt the need to move into killing demons. So I wanted to let the demo play a little bit here so you could see how the game looks and plays. This is a major improvement from Commander Keen, which was a 2D platformer for kids, basically, although the game was far too difficult to actually be playable by kids. Arguably, I would say most people didn't succeed at beating Wolfenstein 3D either. Partially, I would say some of that is because it causes a little bit of motion sickness in the long runs, so you can't actually play the game that well. I do remember playing episode 1 a lot, but technically there's 6 episodes. There was 3 in the original version of the game. We'll see what the Steam release of the game, if it includes all those episodes. It should. The second set of 3 episodes are supposed to be the Nocturnal missions, is what they're called. Here, clearly a game that would have to be heavily censored in Germany these days. Not really great graphics by modern standards at all. I think most of that is a limiting factor of the graphics cards that we would have had at the time. The literal textures of the walls probably couldn't handle any more detail, even if they were to play at a higher resolution. I suspect this engine wouldn't handle much of it very well either. However, the source for Wolfenstein has long since been made open source, so there's hundreds, if not thousands, of projects out there, and people still making Wolfenstein 3D clones. This really did establish the first-person shooter as we know it today. Notice the border around the screen, though. Just another limitation that they had to put because most computers could not handle it. Also in this demo, if you watch these, eventually you will see in the gameplay that he will find a secret passage. So the game is teaching you through the demos. You're supposed to run around, you're supposed to shoot, and you're supposed to find secret passages. That demo I don't think had one, but several of the others do. Multiple demos here versus Commander Keen, where it was the same demo, if any demo played at all, depending on which episode you're talking about. So let's hop into this now. You come over here. For a modern computer, you can change the view to the maximum. This is thinking, interesting. And as far as the setup and control, we now have Gravis gamepad and joystick control, as the later versions of Commander Keen has, but they've added mouse sensitivity, which makes Wolfenstein 3D actually sort of playable. I could see a speedrunner, I could see somebody going back and nostalgically trying to play this game all the way through, but the difficulty curve is still going to be very high just based on the game. The sound is actually stereo, it feels like, because I've been listening to some of the demos and you can hear clearly some sound effects on the left soundstage, some in the right ear and the right soundstage. You have music, you have digitized sound and sound effects, all separate different things. Disney sound source. There's a standard that was never really a standard. Let's hop in here. So, like I said, almost everybody got the shareware version with episode 1, and then probably for a decent amount of money you would have had to pay $15 or would be my guess for episode 2 or episode 3, maybe $30 for both or $25 for both, or maybe they would have gotten a little bit better and maybe only charged you about $60 to have all 6 episodes. So most people are most familiar with the game ending at episode 3, where you fight a robotic Hitler. Of course, you're not going to make it to that. And 4 levels of difficulty compared to Commander Keen, where there was only 3 levels of difficulty and it barely affected anything. Here, it plays with the percentage of damage you take and the percentage of bullets that you have. And they introduced this joke that gets played off in the reboot of Wolfenstein. What is it? Then the reboot was called Wolfenstein. The New Colossus is the game that's the sequel to the reboot. The Old Blood was the prequel to the reboot. The New Order is the name of the reboot. Hard to keep those names, those subtitles in order. They didn't put a number after them. So let's just bring them on and see how far we can get. Surprising, this is just the DOSBox emulator. It seems to work very well. However, I can tell you immediately the controls are in the wrong setup. I'm moving around the camera and the character with the left stick. So none of that tank controls that you would be used to in a first-person shooter. Literally, the right stick is doing nothing. I kind of wish it would... it was configured differently by default. I imagine there might be a way to do that. Let's see. Well, start buttons don't do anything. The left bump just shot a gun. A shoots a gun too. And the right trigger doesn't shoot a gun. So you can definitely hear a sound stage of stereo. Why would the left bump shoot a gun? I only have 7 ammo left and 31 health. I literally can't control this. It is so out of there, in the wrong place. Nothing on the D-pad, which you might expect. Nothing with the left trigger. Nothing with the right trigger, nothing with the right bump. B does nothing, Y does nothing, X does nothing. So a considerable number of buttons just not configured if you were really going to try and play this game with a controller. Now, I suppose, why would you really want to play this with a game? Why not get that full nostalgia feel? See, you can only control the movement with the joystick. You can't change it. So there is a program called Joy to Key that I imagine you would want to use, possibly to adapt a controller to a better setup. And your first mission is escape from Castle Wolfenstein. I'm currently in a game. Interesting feature. How do you control? Oh, you go back to the game. So I'm gonna do something weird and just put down my joystick controller because that's not playable. And let's see. Control and Alt, probably. And space to open doors. And you spend a considerable amount of time in this game. That is a lot easier to control using a keyboard. Clearly it was designed for keyboard control because not everybody had joysticks. And so it's programmed. You can hear a lot of noisy, annoying sounds in a game. In this game, here's some more bullets. As you run against walls, as you press buttons, you spend so much time going against the wall looking for secrets. Maybe there's one over here. Like, maybe I can find one before I'm ready to skip on to the next episode. And characters are unaware if you don't shoot a gun. That was a major factor, is the fact that you could get players' attention. Here's Hitler with a full swastika on his arm. In the demo, I was seeing several images of Hitler without swastikas clearly visible on his arm, but then the demo turned around and showed swastikas on the wall, so that was a strange thing. You have interactable objects in the world, in the sense that you don't just walk over them, and can't shoot them, however. And each level is a maze. Sometimes there's a boss, sometimes there's a key or something you need to collect. And there I died. And you have 3 lives. And unfortunately you start right back where you are, with some of the items refilling, but some of the people refilling too, so you're dead rather quickly. So literally this was the game that John Carmack invented. He made a couple of prototypes of this 3D style first, but this is the next thing. Let's go to Can I Play Daddy? The easiest of easiest. He certainly established the idea of being insulted if you decide to play it. And it's pretty much the same. You start at a place. You have some different textures. And one would think that this is a secret door, and it isn't. And it isn't just about escaping Wolfenstein, Castle Wolfenstein, which is a ridiculous made-up German name. Exploding barrels? Not yet. That was something that I guess had to be introduced in Doom, unless you see them later on in the game. So BJ Blazkowicz, the character here, is now fighting robot zombies. You may have noticed I ran out of bullets there and switched to my knife, which there are multiple guns in this game, which is a major increase again over what Commander Keen had as a game. Id Software really didn't grow that much though in that 1 year. This came out in 1992, and the final part of Commander Keen came out in 91. I imagine a lot of people were very happy with this game when it first came out, for it just being something different. Like, I never even saw these enemies. If that goes to show how many people I imagine only ever played the shareware versions of a lot of the classic games. Being moderately rich would only get you the computer. It wouldn't often get your parents to buy you the games as much as these days. That's a thing that the Nintendo Entertainment System and consoles allowed them to realize that parents kind of needed to support the hardware with some software. Before then, it was very, very possible that your parents might buy your computer and say, well, I already spent what is the equivalent of $3,000 or $4,000 on this PC. Why would I go spend $60 for a piece of software to run on it? It doesn't fully make sense to a parent who very likely never dealt with any kind of mechanical device at all that required software. Computers were pretty unique. And see, the story gets crazy. It would be nice to get kind of a recap of the story, and I suppose in the new order, the reboot of the series, they tried to do that. It is, however, worth pointing out that the new order is far from the first Wolfenstein reboot. Is that a guy down there, or no, it's just a plant. Wow. I am noticing that that hallway is rather longer than anything we've seen up to this point. And you're going with a very standard Indiana Jones story here, where there's golden cups and artifacts that the Nazis are hoarding, which I suppose isn't really an Indiana Jones thing, because it's a thing that was provably done by the Nazi regime, as they would steal gold from people and hoard it all from themselves. It's kind of a shame that episode 3 doesn't immediately put you on the level to fight the Mecha Hitler. Like, even if you were just gonna play episode 3, we're back to the regular enemies too. I'd like to see that boss. I'd like there to be a skip or a cut. There might actually be some kind of console commands or something you could type, but that may have been something introduced in Doom. Yeah, certainly in Doom you can make yourself invincible and clip through areas, and you could easily run. And here we have a locked door, and we're on floor 1. So, yeah, I'd imagine most players never got past floor 1. Frankly, I don't think I could particularly do it. The controlling yourself and jittering, but as the parallax and the angles update, it just leads to that uncanny valley that adds to motion sickness. Notice that the roof is just all gray and the floor is all gray because the graphics cards of the time simply couldn't handle it. And a simple escape gets you back out to this point, but also that doesn't work on a controller because there's no button connected to that, so you can't simply hit start to go back to the menu and pause, which at best means it has very partial controller support. And episode 4 is, here we have Hitler actually in his mustache form, which his Hitler mustache was actually a byproduct from what I hear, and this may be an apocryphal story, meaning that it's not actually true, is that to wear the gas masks of the time, he had to cut his mustache shorter, and after that it just became a recognizable ability thing. This red in particular is pretty bad looking. Red brick. Big puzzle here. We're doing episode 4, which is the prequel. You're fighting mostly the same enemies every time. They clearly don't have enough memory or animation budget. There, I found a key. Wow. I'm surprised I would have even found that. You can see in the lower right hand corner what that means. Here. This guy hasn't seen me, so we can sneak up and stab him. You can see the knife is not very good, so you use it as a last resort. But not really major improvements between the episodes, and that's clearly because each of these episodes were developed in parallel They were designed to be sold as a broken up prisoner. There are dogs in here somewhere that are supposed to attack you, but I have yet to see any of them. Oddly, you'd think somewhere around here I would run into one. They did certainly do a lot of thinking in their level design and area. This isn't just randomly generated stuff. This is things they thought about. This will be the dining room. This will be the prison area. This will be that. Castle Wolfenstein, in all actuality, though, would have to be a sprawling, miles-long complex to accommodate how much area all of these sections is taking. And this is all you really do with Wolfenstein. So, even though it's the grandfather of all first-person shooters, there is also just a short shelf life for first-person shooters. Like, I wouldn't recommend people actually play this game more than maybe 5 minutes. And I'd say kind of just have it as a historical art piece you'd put on your shelf, not something you'd actually play. You know, if you were to have a copy of Schindler's List on your movie bookshelf, you probably don't want to ever watch that movie because it's incredibly depressing and long, but you want to seem cultured and enlightened, and you want to support the message, and in a weird way. Ooh, look at that. That is really, really ugly. Now, I probably have irritated some movie snobs by saying nobody's really going to watch Schindler's List, but they probably should once. Much like Commander Keen, I say you probably should play this game once, maybe play it if you have nostalgia for it. I think playing a game like this, if you have nostalgia for it, is probably a good exercise to break your nostalgia for the game, because modern first-person shooters are just going to offer so much more. And why not just go play the New Order? Why not just experience what is a 25 years worth of development in the video game industry improvement? There is actually a significant amount of pathfinding technology and intelligence things. And I finally found a secret area. There's actually quite a lot in the background of this. Elements that I imagine were in their early stages or first invented for this game. However, there's also a lot here. You can see this directly ideas taken from Commander Keen and other games of the area. Why would B.J. Blazkowicz, somebody who is working against the Nazis, care about collecting the gold and getting score? Why are those collectibles in a game like this? It's only because it is a game that these things that it is set up that way. Why is it that on average you have to shoot a enemy 3 times before you can even kill them, because you'll miss a little to the left, you'll miss a little to the right, and then you'll finally center in. And somehow I've managed to enter a room that had nothing in it. This is another elevator. This is an interestingly complicated beginning area, too. It's much more... Let's see, can we shoot people from this far away? Yes, you can, and if anything, it seems like the game might be helping you quite a bit. Here you have a mosaic Hitler. This is the image I saw before with the Hitler without the swastikas on it, and I thought that was some that I'd been given a censored version on Steam, and I'm like, come on, really? The whole swastika censorship thing in video games, in particular, there's the dogs, for Germany is ridiculous, and it comes from a perspective where they have yet to refute to classify video games as art and having an artful statement. Now, obviously, this artful statement in this game is we don't like Nazis, so let's make a game about killing Nazis. But it's still art, even if the message is not one that's that well thought out. Here we go, confrontation. And in the second series of games, you're not going to fight Mecha Hitler. You're fighting Himmler, one of the higher ups of the Nazi party, below the Führer, Hitler. Himmler, I believe, was like a chief strategist or something. In a lot of ways, that's the explained reasons why they never tried to really assassinate Hitler, is because Hitler was more unstable and random as a leader than they felt Himmler or whoever would replace him would be. Why are they shooting me? Here's a classic problem you have with first-person shooters. Don't even see the guy. He's shooting me through grates, which right at the beginning. Forbidden. Major amount of death here. The white outfit certainly feels wrong for a Nazi. It just doesn't seem like that's what I thought. I've never seen a Nazi in a pure white outfit. I don't know if that's propaganda or if that's just because that's not the dress code they were wearing. Here we have a blue outfit with a machine gun, and so now we have 42 shots on a gun that will lose shots a lot faster. Now, I'm not sure if this goes up to something along the lines of 70 shots, or 7 different guns like Doom. I wouldn't be surprised if there was only 5 or 6 different types of weapons. Let's see. Hitting any of the number keys does not seem like it does anything, so I wouldn't be surprised even if it turned out that there was actually only the machine gun. And this hallway is just full of enemies. So, that is Wolfenstein 3D with its 6 episodes. Not really worth playing, but totally worth having. Totally worth checking out once. However, the thing that people really aren't aware of is that the next piece of Wolfenstein game to be released was Wolfenstein 3 Spear of Destiny, and you can see here on Steam you have to choose your missions, 1, 2, or 3. Let's try 3, and we're back to DOSBox. Maybe in the small amount of time that this DLC extra expansion came out, they've improved their controls a little bit. Maybe not. Here you can see in the emulator you have the maximum amount of money of possible thing. There is an actual voluntary rating they put on the game, but it's actually a joke. It was PC 13 for Profound Carnage 13. Never has the ESRB that rates video games had that rating system. And on top of that, I bet the ESRB didn't exist when this game came out. So what can we expect here? First things first, nothing works as far as a joystick, so we'll see if we can get that to enable. I had to do this before. Top left, top right with button 1. And by default, most people, if they even had a joystick, would have a 2-button joystick like that. And then you have to go and enable the gamepad, which my buttons are so sensitive that you saw it took me many attempts there. But it seems like the most elements are the same as far as that. Sound, exactly the same. They didn't really change much. We can use the arrows to increase it if it was any bigger, but either it read my settings for the previous game or just recognized that it could be at the default. This game in Doom in particular is very funny because you can get the resolution that small. Just if your video card could not handle anything. If you want to play your game on a thumbstick. In fact, let's just look at the demo with that. Just if you want to play your game on the size of a postage, let's see what that looks like. Now, I'll try the controller again, the Xbox One controller I'm using, but almost certainly the control scheme won't be any better. There's far too much in this game series to make it playable in modern days. Too much problems, too many enemies, too many collectibles, too little life, too little help. Games these days are mostly designed so that an average player can beat them on average difficulty. I was playing some of those levels on easy and still not succeeding. So you look there at that size, that is ridiculously small, a tiny number of pixels. Now that's just for the rendering window, so it keeps your screen in a full screen mode regardless, so the bar at the bottom stays the same so you can read that. But those are just tiny little blobs of enemies, and it seems to me like this demo that's playing is actually just demo from Wolfenstein 3D. It doesn't even seem like that was Spear of Destiny gameplay. But let's hop into it. It's kind of amazing how what is relatively, by today's standards, a small step was actually a huge step back in the day. Just getting to a 3D parallax, looking through the eyes of the player, first-person shooter game style of gameplay was a lot. And here I'm using the Xbox One controller. It is the same. You have to control everything with the left stick. The left bump still shoots. Left trigger does nothing. Right bump does nothing. Right trigger does nothing. B, I imagine, runs. A shoots. X opens doors. You can use the door technology to block bullets, sort of, although it's really closer to maybe just blocking the view of your enemies, and that's enough with the controller. That's certainly not a good way to play. It's much smoother. I haven't played with the mouse. Let's see. I guess I can't play with the mouse. Let's try that. Control, mouse enabled, joystick enabled. Alright. Escape. Back to game. Oh my goodness. Oh wow, what a terrible way to control the mouse. So moving upward on the mouse moves you forward, moving back downward on the mouse moves you backward, tilting to the left spins you left, right. I suppose you might be able to figure out this and get this to work. But frankly, I imagine you could convince a decent number of players, left click shoots, I could imagine you could convince a decent number of players that they were just playing the game wrong because they were using the mouse. This really is a keyboard only thing if you want any kind of control. Now I know I have a modern mouse, so maybe I could turn the sensitivity way down and then we can fiddle with that. One of the things that's missing here compared to Commander Keen, though, is there's no story. There's no catch-up. Nothing like that that's saying, look, this is what's going on. Sensitivity down all the way. And we'll see how that works. Probably a little bit better. It's a little bit smoother to turn down the sensitivity. But the game's not fair. Enemies will shoot from corners. You'll certainly suffer for it. Your life will be very low. I've been playing as a baby mode, the easiest mode possible, and you can see I'm at like 28% now. Now this time, however, instead of integrating the Spear of Destiny as their own thing, it's completely separate. At one point, they even sold 100 fan-made mods of Wolfenstein 3D, and more recently they've sold Wolfenstein RPG on the cell phone games, which is just kind of an insult to the series. Which is a very odd series. Like I've said, is at least 5 companies have made Wolfenstein games, and not just because the word Wolfenstein isn't copyrightable, which I imagine it probably isn't, but also because the id Software went on to Doom and succeeded even more on Doom. They really failed forward. They went from Commander Keen, which isn't a very good game, to Wolfenstein, which is a much better game, or at least it was a much more popular and much more technically amazing game than Commander Keen as a series. And then they went to Doom, which is, I would argue, probably the first-person shooter that they made that is still worth playing. There is a reason why Doom has been ported to almost every single game console and PC and Raspberry Pi out there. And the graphics look a little bit better here. I will admit that. This demo, you got some different textures now, a different gun, looks like a different knife, a different elevator. But Spear of Destiny certainly didn't catch anybody's attention. Nobody talks about it. A lot of people don't even know it exists. And frankly, even as I'm covering it, it's not worth covering as its own separate thing. Again, in launching, it's either recognized that my graphics card can handle all of the resolution at the maximum, or it's read some setting. Hard to tell. This time I'm not going to bother to even enable the joystick because it's not going to be any improvement here. And since most of your experience is going to be that floor 1, it probably would have been better if the series did start in random places. We've got blue dogs. There's a story of the creators of the Tomb Raider series, where the original run of Tomb Raider games, Lara Croft was fighting animals a lot because they thought that would be considered less violent. Nowadays, that probably was the sentimentality, is shooting real people versus shooting a dog probably was less offensive back then, but now it's kind of gone the other way, and people care about animals more than people, particularly people they don't like, so it's actually more offensive for a player to be shooting animals. And frankly, without pulling out some major contrivances, you're not gonna please a good portion of players if they are forced to kill animals. Bethesda is pretty well known for having its Fallout series kill your pets if you have a pet dog, until their latest game, in which they finally said, nope, we're not gonna make them a character that dies.
Alarm!
Here we have green uniform Germans and what looks like a rat on the ground. I would say the number of squares on this texture is actually pushing graphics cards more than the original Doom. Like, the number of pixels, the number of squares looks a little bit more detailed. They may have jumped up in resolution a little bit. Again, you could mess with DOSBox emulation settings and probably force this game to run. I clearly did not have my gun pointed anywhere near him, and that's still counted. Maybe these later versions of the game got easier too. It seems like it has. There seems to be less enemies. We're in this weird melty place. There seems to be more health. So they probably pivoted to make the game more achievable later in this episode too, but that's probably too little too late. Here you got a standard Wolfenstein Doom shooting pattern. Completely unacceptable. Modern joysticks have so much variety. There, I more than likely shot that guy right in the back and it didn't count. You've got to get those hitboxes. You can't get to work. Imagine trying to play Overwatch like this, where bullets sometimes didn't hit, or bullets hit when they shouldn't. That would be very frustrating. Indeed. In fact, I think that is one of the complaints about Overwatch, is some of the hitboxes are wrong. Rather frustrating in their development also of putting walls in places. And so that's episode 2. Let's check out episode 3 just so I can say I played it all once. And see, spotlighting and covering these games are worth looking back. It's worth looking back and seeing how much a series can change. And this series is kind of the forgotten stepchild of series. By all rights, there should have been a Wolfenstein game in 1993, 1995, 1997, 1999, 2001. It should have just kept going and going and going. It should have been so saturated and something that just always implemented on itself and improved on itself. Something like what we've seen in more modern games like the Assassin's Creed series, like a game every year. If id Software could have done that, they probably should have done that. Even though they went to Doom, they didn't really do that with Doom. There's Doom 2, their model of selling games through the mail with Apogee as their publisher, I think probably hurt them in a lot of ways, instead of trying to get games on store shelves, which is certainly the Nintendo model, and it's how we have many Mario games and many Nintendo series that constantly come out on different consoles. But here, nothing like that. They kind of just forgot the series, let a few other people use it, let a few other people do whatever they may with it. But it seems like the high scores are the same for all the games too. But yeah, they probably should have licensed or sold the license to Wolfenstein if they couldn't handle it as such a small company, which is, I imagine, exactly the case. Is that when they moved on to Doom, they did the thing that people always want to do in the video game industry, which is work on the next project and not get stuck doing increments on the old projects. But they could have certainly licensed this. I don't know who you would have licensed this to. It's a little funny that Microsoft, in particular, since this is MS-DOS, didn't see an opportunity here and just buy the game itself. Start a gaming division right then in 1992 instead of many years later when they came out with the original Xbox. Which the original Xbox is to sell DirectX, and DirectX was to sell what I believe Windows 95 was the first major version of it that people really use. In fact, you may see on Steam that you still end up installing versions of DirectX 9.0C to run games, which is a shame. It's a shame it's not backward and forward compatible, so you just can have DirectX 11 or 12 installed, and that's it. The guns are different. I think that seems like a waste of development, really, though. This needs a key. You can see the characters always seem to move out of the way. I just collected something. And they fall down and become this parallax enemy that always puts its legs towards you, which is a little weird, but I guess it stops them from having to animate multiple angles. It's like the character is moving when you're not looking. And it's the same pattern you will notice in some of the demons in Doom. I would think if there are that many more weapons, one of these episodes would work you into one of them first, but I guess not, because it's probably a very linear path of getting one gun and then working your way to the next gun. It'd be nice to actually beat a level here, but frankly, it's not worth playing to do it. Like, it's not worth anybody's time. So that's it, I guess. There's most definitely a ton of stuff. Hey, look at that! I actually beat a level. Kill ratio 57%, so the par was 1 minute 30, treasure ratio 30%, secret ratio 0%, and you can see how much health I have affects how I look in the top left. Apparently no bonus. And then we get psyched for the next one. So a lot more to learn, a lot more to read about if you want to look into the history of Wolfenstein 3D. I don't want to pretend like I know a lot of it though myself. I most definitely did a lot of research and looking at Wikipedia to see the many varieties of games. I suppose maybe the reason why they never really wanted to continue Wolfenstein is because this is based on a 2D Wolfenstein game that was an adventure platformer. It looks like that is really, really bad looking. So if id Software made a game based on a series that wasn't really theirs, it makes a lot of sense that they'd want to work on something that, like Doom, that they could claim is from scratch their own idea. However, then why did they not make a Doom 3 until many, many decades or many, many years after Doom 2? They didn't seem like they were too interested. It is a very weird game, originally called Ideas from the Deep, because they were always trying to improve their id tech, their internal thing, and the last thing that they really made that's worth looking at, and it definitely is worth looking at, is a game that uses id Tech 5 and looks amazing for its time, called Rage. It's a hard name to remember because it's just kind of generic, but I think for the most part Rage is the last thing that they did original, and then they did the Doom reboot. And so now id, under the guidance and orders of ZeniMax, which is a growing company, Goliath, has made whatever id actually is. If it's the same people that you see in the high scores, I'm not sure. It probably isn't, if I was to guess. You can't actually look at the high scores here. Interesting. You have to end the game to view the scores, and then it brings you back to the game to kill you. Like Adrian Carmack, John Carmack, Kevin Cloud, Tom Hall, John Romero, Jay Wilbur. I'm not sure any of those people actually work at it anymore. That's more research I should have looked up on Wikipedia. So that's it for the spotlight. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe there's some better players out there that would really like to play these games. Personally, I don't think it's worth your time. Worth having. It's a lovely little bauble to have on your collectible shelf. It's something great to have in your Steam library. More than likely you can get it on sale at some point for very, very cheap, but not really worth playing. Leave it in the packaging. Don't ruin your memories if you did love this game. Mostly don't play it because it's going to make you motion sick. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a